your chapter titled "The Sacred Way of the Rose" was my absolute favorite chapter of the book. I mean, I just love it. And of course, the rose is the dominant symbol of the divine feminine in Western culture, isn't it? As you explain. And it fits so well with this in the context, this chapter, the sacred rose, within the context of this great flowering and flourishing of the feminine principle again in the 12th century with the courts of love.
Yes, so Eleanor of Aquitaine was very absolutely key to this. And she possibly knew about this. Her father was one of the famous troubadours, Duke William of Aquitaine, and she would have been brought up with these stories. And again, she's in
Yes,
the southwest of France, exactly where Mary Magdalene was.
yes,
I hadn't made
yes,
that connection, but that's very important. And so
yes,
the whole facility that she made of making her court a place where love was discussed, where beauty was honored, where
yes,
good manners, where they called it prece parage, which is a lovely
yes,
Provençal title,
yes.
which means courtesy, and
Courtesy.
courtesy, which is so lacking in our culture
Yes,
and has been
absolutely.
lacking for a long time. Courtesy and respect for women and adulation of the woman as the carrier of wisdom and beauty, really.
Yes.
And so
I mean,
the troubadour
sorry.
extolled beauty as as a woman rather as the carrier of beauty and wisdom.
Yes,
Sapientiae, it was called Sapientiae.
yes, yes. Your presentation that you did on the way of the sacred rose for Ubiquity University for their Chart Academy, which was called Mystica Rosa, began with the sweetest troubadour refrain, which has been going round my head these last weeks as I've been immersed in your book. And it goes, whatever their ways, they're all in love with you. Each comes by a path to the rose garden. And I mean, you delight us in this chapter with so many mythological and literal examples of rose gardens. For example, you tell of your own first visit to the blissful gardens of the Alhambra in Granada that I know personally very well. You speak of the exquisite poetry of Rumi and the importance of the rose symbolism within that tradition, courtly love, the troubadours, but also you speak of Cistercian rose gardens still kept today. I live very close to a Cistercian monastery, and they still have the most beautiful rose garden. You talk about the windows, the rose windows at Chartres, and you talk about Dante's exquisite mystic rose in the heart of the Paradiso. But one thing that really struck me was you say that sometimes it was impossible to distinguish between the poetry of the troubadours addressed to the lady from the devotions of the Cistercian monks to the Queen of Heaven, because both, you say, were sort of infused and had underlying the same erotic symbolism. And I found that so beautiful
Yes,
and
I
so
did.
freeing.
Yes, exactly. Well, Virgin Mary was, of course, of supreme importance as well. One mustn't forget her. And
Yes,
I just found writing about the rose was so um, sort of soul nourishing, I think, to trace it back to Isis and that wonderful story about Apuleius and
yes,
change back from a donkey into a man. It was a
yes,
very funny story of him chewing the rose petals and then finding himself stark naked in the crowd when he turned
yes,
into a man. So from that story on, right the way through, you have the rose associated with the goddess in other
yes,
cultures. And so to this day, you have her carts adorned with roses in the Catholic countries as they
yes,
pull them through the streets. And you have above all, the association with the rose windows of Chartres,
yes,
that they were known, of course, when they built them, to be a symbol of wisdom,
Yes.
not only of Christ and the Virgin in the center, but wisdom
Yes.
herself
Yes.
was the carrier of both the
Yes.
Virgin and Christ as the
Yes.
window itself, if you see what I mean. So
Yes.
I
Yes.
found all this so interesting. And Dante, of course, was aware of this through his own experiences. He must have had visionary experiences to write
Yeah.
that extraordinary book in the first place.
Yes.
And there's
Definitely.
so much richness in past centuries that I think it's absolutely tragic that children are not taught anything at all today about any of this, about past civilizations. They're taught about
Yes.
the Romans of all civilizations to choose instead of the
Yes.
Greeks, you know? Anyway,
Yes.
I'm going off on my own tangent now, so come back to
No,
your question.
please do. I mean, I just wanted to return to your chapter on the way of the sacred rose, because you also mention and you say it was a favorite book of yours, The Secret Garden.
Yes,
And yes, and the wonderful healing story that takes place in the Secret Garden, which is still available. It hasn't been banned yet. It's still available for
still
children
available.
to read, despite its strange references to the Raj, etc. You know,
No,
it's still
it's a
still possible.
magical story, a magical story. In the age of 8, I was reading it, and I'm still reading it at the age of 90, because
Oh, are you still?
yeah,
Yeah,
because it's as you read it, you taken into the magic of transformation,
yes,
and
yes,
the way the crippled boy is healed, the way the garden comes back to life. And in fact,
yes,
that reminds me, because before we wrote The Myth of the Goddess, Jules had a dream that she should contact me because she had a dream of a ruined garden that had to be restored. And
yes.
that was the trigger for The Myth of the Goddess.
That's amazing. You know, and that was I was going to ask you about that. I had a note about it, but how incredible to have such a dream, and how perfect a metaphor is that, you know, an abandoned garden in need of restoration. Of course, that is what you've done. I mean, I'm minded of the quotation that you use in the chapter, which is from Alchemy. In the final stages of alchemy, you say the rose opens in an absolute ecstasy of love and compassion for all. You know, this chapter to me, Anne, it just feels holy to me. I have to say there are no other words to express how I feel about it. It just feels so beautiful to me.
Now, that's
And
lovely to hear,
yes,
because to me also the rose has always been special. And when I came to live here in England, where I am now, my first thing was to plant rose bushes everywhere. They don't do very well on moist soil, unfortunately, which is chalk.
yes,
They like
yes,
clay soil, but anyway, I have as
yes,
many as possible. I've got one called Awakening, which was one chosen by Prince when he was Prince Charles by the King. This rose called Awakening, very beautiful pink rose. And there are other ones with marvelous titles. I put that in my book, The Dream of the Cosmos. It's in the
yes,
first chapter, My Attraction to
yes,
the Rose. And
yeah.
that
Yes,
and that quotation from Walter de la Mare, no one knows through what wild centuries rose back the rose.
oh, that's
That's
so
really
lovely.